Do you struggle to come up with great titles for your books? Or are you looking for a methodical, logical approach for coming up with great book titles? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you exactly that. What's up, guys? Dave Jacobsen here, best-selling author and book publisher. And in this video, I am going to give you some simple tips and strategies for how you can make your book title stand out from the crowd. So without further ado, I'm going to shrink my melon-sized head here. And as you can see, I've created this Word document, which I've entitled Formula for a Best-Selling Book Title. And I noted in parentheses that this really applies mostly to indie and self-publishing. Obviously, for J.K. Rowling, or you've got a lot of money behind you and you're traditionally published, they've got different strategies, and it's less important if you're a New York Times bestseller to have these tips and strategies applied to your title. Now, if you can apply these things to the strategies I'm going to show you here to your title as a traditional author, it's only going to make you have that much more success. So you might as well stick around and watch the video. But I'm really focusing this video mostly for self-published authors, as for us self-published authors, it is very important and critical that your title stands out. So the first thing I want to cover is the question, why is your title even important, right? So the answer is, number one, your title is the first thing potential customers will see. And this applies both in traditional publishing and self-publishing, right? So your first customer, if you're traditionally publishing, is your agent, right? You need to get an agent. So your title is going to be the first thing they see. It's literally going to be in your subject line of a query letter, for example, a query letter email. And so it is still critically important. But if you're self-publishing, let's say on the KDP platform, it's going to be the first thing that people see, right? On Amazon's platform when they're scrolling through all of these books. Therefore, it's the first point of either acceptance or rejection of your book. So it'd be great if we could just get, hundreds or thousands of people to read the book descriptions when we're self-publishing our books. But the reality is people won't even look at your book description unless they're first drawn in or intrigued in some manner by your title. So therefore, your book title is the first point of acceptance or rejection, and for that reason, it's very important. The second reason it's very important is your title has the opportunity to be a very powerful marketing tool. Right? So what exactly do I mean by that? Well, first of all, your book title has the opportunity to be a potential click magnet. And so what I mean by that is, let's say someone's scrolling on Amazon, right? And they see a title that just wows them or intrigues them. Well, they're going to stop scrolling and they're going to click on your book, and it's going to draw them in and give you the opportunity to potentially make that book sale. Similarly, it can also be a powerful tool in telling search engines exactly what your book is about and who it should be showing that book to. And so here's where we're going to get into this in a minute, but using, for example, keywords to tell search engines, and Amazon is a search engine, by the way, what your book is about so that they can suggest it to the right customer at the right time, right? So your book title can be a powerful tool for actually finding the audience that you're trying to find via these search engines, whether it's Google or Amazon or any other search engine. So that's just the basic overview of why your title is important in the first place, right? So now I want to get to the second topic of this video, and the one that you're probably mostly interested in, which is, what are the elements of a good title, right? What makes a good title a good title? So the first element applies mostly to high concept books. Okay, so a high concept book is like Jurassic Park, for example, in fiction. It's something that immediately you understand the concept of the book. Immediately it grips you and it appeals to a broad audience, right? So if you're trying to shoot for that type of book, then these elements are going to should apply to your title. Number one, your book needs to be unique, fresh, original, unusual, or unexpected, right? And if it's not unique, then why is somebody going to choose your book over another title that's, not that's very similar? Especially if there's tons of similar titles, how are you going to stand out from the crowd, right? If your book is just like those, you need, again, we're trying to create potential click magnets and draw people in immediately with our book title. So that's why you have to be unique. The second thing your book title has to have, if you're going for high concept, is it should be universally, it should appeal to universally to a broad audience, right? So that's kind of what a high concept book is aimed to do, right? You want your book title to be relatable to a broad audience, or fascinating or interesting to a broad audience. And this is going to maximize your ability to draw those people in, right? Okay, so that's for high concept books. Now let's talk about not high concept books. So you might not always want to be publishing a high concept book, right? Not everybody wants to write Jurassic Park. Now, ideally, if you're trying to create a bestseller, you want to have something that's universally interesting or relatable, right? So high concept books generally tend to lead to the bestsellers. But let's say you want to create a very targeted book that's targeting a very specific audience. In that case, it's probably not going to be a high concept book, but you still want to make sure that your title stands out. So in that case, you're still going to make it be unique within the niche that you're targeting, right? Because you still want to stand out from the crowd. And if your book title is just like 10 other book titles, it's very similar, then how are you going to grip people's attention and draw them in, right? You're probably not. So you need to make sure it's unique, fresh, unusual, or unexpected. And you will want to appeal to your target audience based on their interests, right? So we still want to have the appeal factor here, even though it's not high concept. But now you're going to be trying to appeal to a select specific audience. So you got to try to get inside that target audience's head. And I'm going to give you some tips for how you can do this in a moment. But you want to figure out, who's your target audience for this specific book. And you want to think about their interests, right? And so you're going to have to you're going to have to marry those interests to your book title in some way to really draw in that specific niche audience. Okay. So those are some elements of a good book title. What else? What are some other good things to think about when you're creating a book title? Well, your title should immediately grab a reader's attention and demand to be noticed, right? So again, we got to stop the scroll. There might be 100 books on the page that someone's looking on Amazon's website, right? So we have to figure out how to stand out and get somebody to click on our book instead of someone else's book. And so how do we do that? Our title has to immediately grab your attention in some way. And I'm going to give you some tips for how to do that in just a second. But it basically has to demand to be noticed, right? That's the mentality you should have when you're trying to think of these book titles, right? And in addition to that, you might want to consider making your book title clever, right? So that's one way you can grab someone's attention. You might use a pun, for example, in your book title, and somebody might notice the pun and immediately laugh, right? It might trigger a giggle, and that's going to evoke an emotional response from these people who are browsing book titles. And if they think it's clever, well, guess what? They're probably going to click into your book. So that's one strategy or tip you can use to immediately grab a reader's attention, right? You can also use words in your title that are buzzworthy in some way, right? So something that's going to think about, like, if you look at mainstream media articles, or you go on certain mainstream media websites, or I think of the AOL homepage when I'm trying to log into like an AOL email account. They've got all these buzzworthy words, right, to try to get you to click on different articles, for example. So you can start incorporating those types of ideas into your book title, right? So if you're struggling to come up with something buzzworthy, then you might try to add an idea or a word that's controversial, right? So depending on the audience that you're trying to sell your book to, right, you've got to be careful about that and think about that, right? So if this is a kid's book, you're not going to use highly controversial words, right, in your title. But if it's aimed towards adults, maybe you can get a little bit more risque, for example. So that's another strategy you can employ. Gossip worthy, right? Anything that's gossip worthy, something people want to talk about. That is going to also trigger this response of people, giving your book attention. And then also I add one more suggestion here, or just interesting in some way, right? So figure out what is going to appeal to your audience that you're writing this book for, and what is interesting to them, and try to capture that somehow in your book title, right? And then the fourth and final element here is that your book title should include high volume, low competition keywords related to your book. Okay, so you can do this in fiction and nonfiction, right? So in fiction, people might be searching for dragons, for example, or mermaids. I mean, mermaid is searched so much on Amazon, it's ridiculous. So if you're writing a book that includes undersea creatures, maybe you include the word mermaid in the title and figure out how to incorporate that in your book. For nonfiction, right, let's say you are writing a book about sewing, right? You want to appeal to that audience. Well, there may be people who are already searching for something related to your book, like sewing books might be a keyword that people are searching for frequently on Amazon. So you want to make sure to incorporate those keywords into your title so that it makes it easier for the algorithm to to find your right audience and promote your book to that audience, right? Now, if you'd like some more tips and strategies about how you can incorporate keywords specifically into your title, make sure to check out my video on keyword research. I'll put a link to that in this video once it's published. And that's pretty much it. If you got value out of this video, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.